Welcome to Saddle Up Live, a transformative podcast tailored for women aged 40 and beyond, where courage, God's grace, and a touch of sass are the driving forces behind conquering life's challenges. Join me, Lisa Koski, as I take you on a captivating ride through the multifaceted aspects of womanhood in this vibrant stage of life. We are covering everything from my journey through breast cancer, the intricacies of marriage, and the joys of motherhood, to the exciting adventures of grandparenting. In each episode, we saddle up for candid conversations about God, health, relationships, family dynamics, and the beautiful chaos that comes along the way. But here's the twist. Saddle Up Live goes beyond navigating the highs and lows of life. It's a platform dedicated to sharing what we have learned along the way. I want to help women thrive through it all. Together, we'll uncover actionable strategies for personal and professional development, providing you with the tools and inspiration needed to blaze new trails and seize every opportunity that comes your way. Moreover, we are committed to helping you suffer less and live more fully. Through our discussions on God, health, wellness, and mindfulness, we explore practical techniques for managing stress, cultivating resilience, and embracing a holistic approach to self-care. So whether you're looking for practical advice, heartfelt stories, or simply a supportive community of like-minded women, saddle up and join us on this exhilarating ride. Because at Saddle Up Live, we believe every woman deserves to thrive, flourish, and live her best life, no matter her age or stage. Welcome to Saddle Up Live. I'm really excited about the next couple of episodes that I have for you. I had this amazing psychiatrist on doing Divorce Different years ago, and I'm going to let you get to know him in this episode. Today's episode is probably only going to be about 15 minutes or so, but Dr. Adam Woods has the most interesting background. And the thing I love about it is like you kind of can get to know him, learn about what he's done in his life, and get to trust him. He's very knowledgeable. Then next week, I'm going to have one of my longest episodes ever where we go through the 5 things that he talks about to have a healthy life emotionally, physically, spiritually. So check into that one too. But I'm so glad that you're here. It's one of my absolute favors. Stay tuned. Welcome to Doing Divorce Different. Listeners, I am so thrilled. I must tell you, my guest today doesn't know this, but actually was kind of an answer to my prayers, which is interesting. So I have Dr. Adam Woods with me, and he's a family psychiatrist. We can talk more about that later, but what got me connected to Dr. Adam is I have someone I'm really close to who was looking for some help and happened to just find you, I don't even know, like online, went to you, met with you, and it has changed this person's life. And this person rattled off the 5 steps to well-being. And it is so in line with me and my life and what I want from my clients and my listeners that I just feel like I can't tell you. It's a privilege to have you here. So I was so excited that you were going to be on the podcast. And then I asked for your bio. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we could talk about your life, Dr. Adam. I mean, we could talk about that probably for a full episode. We don't know if this is going to be 1 or 2 episodes. It depends on how long it is. But we're going to start out where I want to get to know Dr. Adam a little bit better because he has a really interesting story, a unique story about how he landed in doing what he's doing. Then we're going to talk about the 5 steps, the process to well-being. And then if we have time in this episode or for the one following, we're going to talk specifically about maybe some divorce tips that Dr. Adam can share with us. So welcome, Dr. Adam.
Well, thank you so much for having me. That's quite an intro. I hope I can live up to it.
I think Joe Rogan's going to be calling you after he hears all the interesting things in your life. Honest to God.
That'd be great. Sam Harris too. I'm a big fan of Sam
Oh,
Harris.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there you go.
All right. Well, I'm thankful that you're here. And that what was so interesting to me is I'm looking, for one thing, anytime anyone's a medical doctor, I want to fall down and like, thank you. My daughter is one. And what you go through to become a doctor is so grueling and takes such dedication that now when I see, I mean, it was always service people and now it's service people and doctors. I'm always thanking that they put the time in. So that's a huge deal. But you didn't go there right away. Can you just share your story and your journey with the listeners?
Yeah, so not to bore people to death, I'll try to get to it, and I'm not good at doing that. But I was born in a small Iowa town with only about 4,000 people, but we moved to the big city of Des Moines, the capital, when I was about 10. And I was a very awkward child. I had a fairly pronounced stammer. And if you get me in a position where I'm nervous, I'll still stammer quite a bit. But I got involved in singing, which was sort of a big thing for me. And that kind of led me to opportunities where I was doing theater. And my mother recognized my my passion for that. And I was raised by a single mother who I think was, kind of looking for outlets for her son where sports weren't a big thing for her and what were ways we could connect with things. So I started going to see whether it was the touring productions at the Civic Center in Des Moines or the local community theater, and I just fell in love with theater. So after high school, I actually thought about being a doctor in high school. You mentioned the grueling thing that we go through. I thought about being a doctor in high school, but thought that I was too dumb because all of the doctors I'd ever met, especially in that small town, they were treated like gods. And I thought you had to be a genius to be a doctor. That'll come back in my story. But I decided to go to nearby Drake University and to major in theater. And I majored in acting and playwriting. And I got to spend a semester with the National Theater Conservatory in Connecticut. We spent time studying with the Royal Shakespeare Company in England. And then after that semester, I actually went to New York that summer and wound up getting a bunch of professional jobs. And I spent nearly a year on a cruise ship as lead singer and was all over the world. This is before 9/11. I was 21. I turned 22 on the cruise ship. Wow. So a wonderful time for a young man in his formative years to experience all these different languages and religions. And I always say to people, I could lie and say I was looking to meet people. I was looking to meet girls, but in the different countries where there were girls my age, there were guys my age. And so I made friends all over the planet.
Right.
And I didn't know that, as an example, I mentioned 9/11, that America was hated. Like I didn't know that because I had been sheltered and so forth. But it really opened my eyes to different philosophies and so forth. So I got a few more acting jobs and decided I was actually on tour in Texas when I realized that, theater was probably not going to be my vocation. It was my passion. It was my avocation, but I wasn't going to do it sort of full time. And I had really set out to do what I wanted to do, which honestly was prove to my parents I could be a professional actor and pay the bills. And so I'd done that. And so I started thinking about what are other careers that might sort of play to my strengths. And when I was on tour in Texas, we were in a different town every single week. And back then I was fairly involved in the Presbyterian Church, which is the church where I was raised. And almost none of these churches had pastors. And I started thinking about it. And I thought, what are the skills it takes to be a good parish pastor? You have to be able to speak in front of people, sing in front of people, walk into a room where you don't know anyone, like someone's home or a hospital room, and talk to people. And I thought, these are all the things that I'm good at doing. And so I got a full ride to Princeton, which was founded by the Presbyterians long ago. And so I thought this is the next move. So I finished my undergraduate degree and I went off to Princeton. And I actually got to be involved in theater a lot when I was in Princeton, both the university theater and then New York is a short train ride away. And so that was great. But I started doing my basic seminary studies from what's called a Master's of Divinity. That's the basic degree that most ministers have. And I joined the Air Force my first year of seminary because my grandfather, who was more like my dad, because my dad had left when I was really young, We could talk about that, my experience
I
with
know,
divorce
that's
as a
interesting.
child, right?
Yep.
But so my grandfather had been in World War II. And so the Air Force and actually all the military services have this really cool program, at least they used to, where if you want to be a chaplain, you can go and train and they'll pay you and you do all this stuff, but you're not required to sign a contract that will then commit you to 4 years or 6 years or something like that. So I went off and did this Air Force chaplain training and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And the first summer, I wound up at the base in Omaha, which is, close to my family.
Yeah.
And I made a lot of very powerful friends. And that's important because it plays into the next part of my life. If you ever watch the movie A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson says at one point to Tom Cruise, I don't want money, I don't want medals. And so that's actually really true in the Air Force and in any military service. What you want are favors. You want somebody with a lot of power owing you a favor. The best would be the president, and the second would be the vice president, and so forth. Well, I had a 4-star general owed me a favor because once I got to that base, I was playing the piano and singing and doing all this stuff. And it was actually his wife that befriended me and had me play the piano and sing when they would entertain senators and congressmen. And Omaha is a very powerful base. For those of you who don't know, that's where Bush was taken on 9/11. So anyway, I had these very powerful friends. So my second year after seminary, which is 3 years, I asked to go into a hospital chaplain training program. I didn't really think I was going to be a hospital chaplain. It was very prestigious. And because I had these really powerful friends, I got in right away. Whereas people had to, I was a good candidate anyway, to be honest.
Right.
But I got this thing. So I got sent off to the Seattle area. And for those of you that don't know this, in 1947, the Air Force came out of the Army. So if you ever hear someone in World War II say they were in the Air Force, they were in the Army Air Corps. And then the Air Force broke off in 1947. So the Army still does a lot of stuff with the Air Force. We train with them and really work with them a lot. So anyway, I got sent to this Army base in Tacoma, Washington, Madigan Army Medical Center at Fort Lewis. And I found myself working in this hospital. And because I was living on the West Coast, my girlfriend at the time was in Baltimore, and I didn't have much else to do. Plus, I'm kind of a workaholic. I would volunteer for extra duty in the hospital. And I was in the ER and the post-surgical units, and I just loved it. I loved working in medicine. What I noticed very quickly was the really good doctors were doing my job. They were sitting with the families, being present, being very spiritual, but not proselytizing, being comforting. And then the very bad doctors would just come in the room and just wreck the place. And I remember, and so I would be in charge of cleaning up after those people. And I won't tell my favorite story, but there was a story in the ER that was just awful of what I saw the physician do. And so I was walking all around the hospital, and people would ask me about their diagnoses. They'd say, Lieutenant, what do you think about this? The doctor said this about the cancer or the whatever with the heart disease. I didn't know anything. I had never gone to that kind of school. And so and also when you're a chaplain and people come to the ER, seeing angels or hearing the voice of God or something like that, they tend to call you. And so I knew all these psychiatry residents. I didn't know what a resident was. I just knew they were doctors, but I had all their phone numbers on my cell phone. And a lot of times I have to call them and go, I think this is one of yours and not one of mine. And so I was raised by mental health care workers, not doctors. My parents actually don't like psychiatrists. It's kind of funny. But, I went back to Princeton and I finished my senior year with the idea that I would just go and be a pastor or a chaplain or something like that. And I just couldn't shake the feeling that I wanted to be a doctor and that I really wanted to pursue medicine. I was so inspired. And that particular base, we're talking about the early 2000s. So Fort Lewis, Washington is a big Ranger base, 3 big Ranger battalions there, and they took heavy losses during shock and awe. In fact, the first chaplain killed since the Civil War was killed at that base, and I happened to be there. So it was a very interesting time because unlike Vietnam veterans who got, we hate the war and we hate you, you're baby killers and so forth, we, the veterans of the Operation Iraqi Freedom, we hate this war, but we love you and thank you for what you're doing. So I felt very supported and so forth. But remember, I thought doctors were geniuses, and I thought you had to be really, really smart to go to med school. And then I met all these residents working at that Army hospital, and I realized that they weren't geniuses. They were smart, but what they were was hard workers. I'm a hard worker. So in seminary, I had to take Greek and Hebrew and Latin, and study hard is something I know how to do. All right. So I started talking to some other people that I knew, some doctors, my girlfriend at the time who was getting her PhD at Johns Hopkins, and she knew a bunch of doctors. And I thought I was 26 and I thought I was too old. You know, it's the folly of youth, right? And I really expected everybody in my life to say, you're insane. You know, you're too old. You know, you've just got your master's degree. Why in the world would you want to do that? And almost everybody in my life was like, that's a great idea. You should totally do that. What a fantastic idea. So I had to go back to undergrad and do some post-baccalaureate work. And I take chemistry 1, biology 1, physics 1. In fact, I did the math. The first day I was sitting back at Drake, my undergraduate school, taking chemistry 1, I did the math. The day I was a real freshman, the rest of those kids around me were starting 5th grade. So
my God.
That's how old I felt. But, I studied my butt off, and I got a really, really good MCAT score and was the first student ever in the history of Drake to get accepted to Duke, which was my top choice for medical school. And off I went to Duke, and I did 4 years at Duke, and had to admit to myself, I swore I wouldn't be a psychiatrist. I swore I wouldn't be a psychiatrist because my parents thought I'd be a psychiatrist, and that girlfriend's dad, who was a doctor, swore I'd be a psychiatrist. And my first rotation was psychiatry, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought, oh man, I love this. And then, when I did my pediatrics rotation, I loved that too. And I thought, oh, good. I'll be a pediatrician. That way I don't have to be a psychiatrist. And so I did a pediatric psychiatry rotation. That was it. I never looked back. So I came back to Iowa 10 years ago. This last June, I moved to the Iowa City area, fully intending on going back to North Carolina once I got my residency done. And wouldn't you know it, I met a girl and we got married and had a baby. And now, like many generations of Woodses before me, I'll probably die in this state. And I'm okay with that. And I will say, just to bring it back to your listeners, during the time I was in med school, I actually was married and got divorced. So that
I didn't know that. Oh.
That very much will inform the second part of the conversation that we have in terms of my own experience. So not only a child of divorce, I myself am divorced. My current wife was divorced once as well. So it actually was one of the conversations that bonded us in the beginning. Mm-hmm. We'd both kind of been down this path. But anyway, so I now live in the Iowa City, Iowa area. It's one of those places where you've got 3 or 4 little towns that are really close together. So technically I live in Coralville. My office is in North Liberty, but nobody knows where those are. Iowa City is where the University of Iowa is. Yeah. And so I've been here for 10 years. And honestly, I don't think I'll ever leave. I love the Iowa City, Iowa area. I'm close enough to Des Moines. My mother is still there, and she can come and see her granddaughter and all that. But I like this town. It's fantastic. So that's I told you it wouldn't be short. That's my circuitous story that got me here.
Okay, listeners, this is where I'm going to cut off the recording. We got to meet Dr. Adam Woods. Isn't he amazing? I'm so glad that you joined us, and come back next week where he really delves into the 5 things he recommends to having a happy, healthy life. I'm excited for you to be back. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to another empowering episode of Saddle Up Live. As we conclude this exhilarating journey together, don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts, and become a valued member of our vibrant community. Because, as always, every woman deserves to thrive, flourish, and live her best life. Until the next time, saddle up and keep conquering those trails.